wake her up at 5 a.m. for sex without connection, you might as well be setting an alarm for resentment. I had a really interesting session with somebody this morning, and one of the challenges that a lot of couples have, especially if they have infertility problems, is the fact that sex can start feeling like a chore and much less like connection. You end up with a situation where you've got kind of three purposes of sex in some of these situations. One is, are we having sex because we're trying to get pregnant right now? Are we having sex to try to connect? Or are we having sex just to try to release sexual tension? The dynamics around those three different types of sexual intimacy can feel very differently to a couple. And in this couple situation, probably something that many of you have experienced, she had gotten to bed at like 1 o'clock in the morning because she was having to work. And then at 5 o'clock in the morning, he woke her up wanting to have sex. And what he said was, are we in the window? Do we need to be having sex before the kids wake up? Leading with, hey, the purpose of this sexual encounter is to try to get pregnant. And she felt objectified, she felt used, and very inconsiderate, and said, I don't have to be up for another 3 hours, and said no. So then at 8 o'clock, he came back in with the same sex bid, with the same request to have sex again. And she was still tired and felt kind of fed up, felt like he was being insensitive because of what she'd already communicated, and refused that bid again. And then this morning, he woke her up again at 5:30 with the same, hey, are we in the window? We better have sex. Again, she felt disconnected. She felt unappreciated. She felt like it was the third category of, this is more about him wanting a sexual release than either baby making or emotional connection. And she just said, fine, do your thing, and engaged in sex, but was not present at all. In order to understand this interaction, we need to back up a little bit to the previous couple of weeks. A few weeks ago, he had been out of town for a week, and then the week after that, she had been out of town for a week. And so they had very little time together, and very, very little time to be able to connect with each other and spend time with each other, to engage in relationship deposits and relationship fillers, to be able to feed the connection between them. And so they both felt very disconnected from one another. And in his mind, like most men tend to feel connected to their partners as the result of sexual intimacy. And so in his mind, it's like, well, we're disconnected. We haven't been together for a few weeks. We need to have sex so that we can reconnect. And for her, most women want to have sex as the result of feeling emotionally connected to their partners. And so in her mind, it's like, no, before we engage in sexual intimacy, we need to go on dates. We need to hold hands. We need to cuddle. We need to talk. We need to spend time with each other. We need to do things to connect emotionally so that I actually want to be sexual or to have sex with you. And so that was kind of the background that led to this scenario that is a common one that a lot of couples experience. So what do you do about it? Was he out of line to wake her up at 5 o'clock in the morning after she'd only been asleep for a few hours, and then to do it again just a day or two later? The answer to that is probably yes. He probably could have handled that differently. One of the things that we worked through in that session is that each one of us has a lot of personal responsibility to do the things within our control to help us feel the way that we want to feel. If you're a woman and you're feeling disconnected from your partner or your spouse, instead of just sitting back and waiting for him to do the things to help you feel connected and putting that responsibility on him, there's normally a lot that you can do to help you feel more connected emotionally with him. You can initiate emotionally connecting things. Hey, let's go on a date. Do you want to sit and watch the show? Or will you come on a walk with me? Or will you rub my back? Or will you help me do the dishes? Or, whatever your love language is, if you stop and say, okay, I'm feeling disconnected from my husband. What are things that would help me feel connected to him? And in that regard, you actually have much more control over your sexual desire than you might typically think. Because if you do the things to connect with him, which is very much the case with this couple that I was with this morning, they actually have a pretty good relationship. She actually really likes her husband and likes who he is. And like any of us, when the marital reservoir is sucking mud and we don't have resources in there, then we don't have the resources to absorb the stresses and the strains of normal life. And then everything starts bugging you. You know, the toilet paper not being put on the roll, and shoes being left in the living room, and crumbs on the counter, and all those kinds of things really start bugging us, and we start thinking, oh, I don't even like you. I don't want to be around you. And that's really much more of a resource issue than actually not liking your partner. I really want you to recognize the power that you have in being able to create the kind of emotional milieu or climate that you want to have. Likewise, you men out there, you need to understand how most women work. In your mind, it's totally normal and totally fine to want to use sex to reconnect with your wife or your partner. That is a gender difference that doesn't apply to all men, but does apply generally. And so it's how your brain is going to naturally work. Is like, if you feel disconnected, your brain likely is going to think, well, we should have sex so that we're reconnected. You need to understand that your wife's brain does not work like that. And if you want her to look forward to and to want to connect sexually with you, there's tons of things that you can proactively do to help her feel connected emotionally first. Those are the kinds of things that will help her feel emotionally connected to you and increase her desire to be sexually connected with you. You also want to stop and think, okay, what message does it send to your partner if you wake them up in the middle of the night to have sex? Now, occasionally, is that okay to do? Yeah, and when your relationship is in a good place and you're already feeling connected and there's a lot of good vibes already going on, then that might be something that you both want to do. You also want to think about the message that is being sent. Am I considering you? Am I being thoughtful of you and the day that you have coming up? Am I being thoughtful of the night that you just had? Am I being thoughtful of where our relationship has been over these past few weeks? Am I being mindful of the state of the emotional reservoir, the marital or the relationship reservoir between the two of us? If you're thinking about those things and your behavior is either inconsistent with where your relationship is at that point, or you're thinking more about you and your needs than your partner's needs, then it's probably not going to land very well. And instead of it being this opportunity to really connect and have an enjoyable time together, even if you end up having sex, the effect on your relationship is probably going to be detrimental and not beneficial. If your partner says, fine, do your thing, that is not consent. That is disconnection and a recipe for disaster.